Ben Ravid could not be here. His presentation was The Estates of a Jewish Merchant and a Rabbi in 17th Century Venice, and our wonderful host, Bernie Cooperman, is going to play Ben Ravid in today's film.
Those of you who know Ben Ravid know how impossible it is to play Ben Ravid. There is no way to do it. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I do have a few notes that I made. What Ben was going to do, I spoke to him at some length last night. I would like to call my little presentation, I mean, I think the main thing to do is to talk about the material, the document, as was so wonderfully useful in talking about Flora's document before. But what I would like to raise is it's one of the issues that I think was raised by Paula's talk at the beginning, and that has been raised on occasion, but not always in our talks, because it turns out that material culture leads in many different directions. I mean, it can lead to understanding the non-halachic reality of Jewish practice. It can lead to the understanding of art and its significance as a series of objects, and so forth. But in today, when we look at these inventories, it's very much a question of lifestyle or level of life and things like that. So I would like to call this stuff and identity, okay? Or stuff and Jewish identity, based on George Carlin's famous line about the garage full of stuff, and he made the point, and I'll use a nicer language than he used, there is stuff and there is garbage, so get your garbage out of the garage so I can put my stuff in it, right? I mean, but there really is a question here, I think, about the accumulation, which is certainly much more in evidence in these documents than what we would have known about, broadly speaking, for earlier periods. People simply have more stuff. And then the question is, what can that tell us? How do we interpret these lists of stuff to know things about the people? And so it's not so much about the actual objects that I want to talk about, not so much about the lists, but about how we could use these lists, granted what we know about the people involved. Because in both cases, Daniel Rodriguez and Leon Modena, we know a lot about these people. And so here what you have is not just a statement of what was left at the end of their lives, but also how can we use this to evaluate who they were and so forth and so on. The first question, and I think, Paula, probably you can say more about this than certainly I can, but it's a question that came up for me in looking at the work of a young scholar who has worked on Livorno, the town that interests me more than anywhere else. She tried to use inventories and notarized wills to determine how much, what the lifestyle of people was, what the quality of life, what the apartment looked like, how much stuff people had in their apartment, things like that. And I remember as I read her work, and she had very few examples, I remember being very bothered by it, because her picture, based on what was in the document, didn't seem to me to coalesce with any image of what I had of the way a Jewish life or these people who I knew from other documents would have lived. And in other words, I saw some kind of discontinuity, and we saw that in a sense in talking about, well, how do we read Flora's list, and why are there notes fill in here, and and so forth and so on. What does it mean if there were 15 people and 64 shirts, and so forth?